I'm a typical Gemini. I have two different personalities. This is my business look, but I'm not girly, actually. I just have to look girly for what I do.
Really? That's why I was surprised with
I don't get my nails done. Like, I'm covered in
Yeah, I
tattoos.
guess.
I'm not a girly girl
That's
at
why I
all.
was surprised when you said your own because of all the hot
Yeah, no,
pink
this
and
is totally a facade for business.
stuff. That's fair.
I'm in the beauty industry. I have to,
Yeah.
you know. But at work, my clients know me for me. I have
Yeah.
my leggings, my sweatshirt, my sneakers on, and most days I pull up on my bike. Hi, I'm Andrea Pascale. I am the owner of Long Island Esthetics in Massapequa. I also host a podcast called the Glow Local Podcast. But my firstborn is my salon, Long Island Esthetics, and I've had that for. We've been in our brick and mortar shop going on now 5 years. I have been in the industry for 12, and I have had the business for a total of about, I think it's like 8 or so years now. I have to do the math, but a while. And it used to be called Waxed by Andrea. So we've transitioned and rebranded the last few years into what is now Long Island Aesthetics.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I've had a couple different people in your industry on, so it's cool to hear all the different perspectives from all the different industry professionals and their experience or lack of experience, which is very
Mhm.
interesting as well because the lack of experience, I think, just gives a different perspective on business. I think that sometimes people become complacent with
Yeah.
experience. So just all kind of running the gamut. So what brought you into the industry?
Great question. So actually, I had no intention of being in the beauty industry. I actually went to college for 4 years. I graduated with a degree in behavioral sciences with a concentration in sociology and social work. Towards the end of my undergrad career, I randomly had a conversation with an old friend from high school who had just gotten her waxing license. And essentially, she had told me that she was making pretty much the same amount of money in that industry as a waxer that she had been making as a bartender. And at the time, I was bartending my way through college. So I had been actually looking for a new job per se at the time because bartending in undergrad was pretty challenging with the hours that were that I needed to be there. There were days that I was working till 2, 3, 4 in the morning and then had to be up for class in the morning. So naturally, I was getting really burnt out and tired. I wasn't really able to complete my assignments the way that I had wanted to. So I just randomly signed up for the night course to become a licensed wax specialist, which was just a 75-hour course at the time. And fast forward, I got my license. I was still in undergrad. I started waxing at a local franchise. And sure enough, she was right. Within a year, I was making practically the same that I was making bartending, just with a much I thought at the time, I mean, I guess this is objective, but like I thought to do an easier job. So I loved the hours and I waxed my way through my last year of college. Funny enough, I graduated college and I started looking for jobs naturally, like anybody else would do after spending 4 years in school studying. Um, I found a job within a year of graduation, and within 6 months, I looked at my supervisor and I was like, this isn't for me. I want to go back to waxing. So she was, funny enough, I thought she was going to look at me like I was crazy, but she actually encouraged it. Why? Because I became a foster care caseworker. That was my first real job out of college. And for $38,000 a year, I was being put in some pretty crazy situations, and not to mention the mental load that comes with that. So yeah, I actually contacted an old coworker of mine. I said to her, hey, listen, I'm miserable in this job and I can't imagine me finding something that's going to be much better or that will pay me much better. I think that I want to open my own little waxing studio. Would you be interested in joining me? So yeah, she joined me. We opened our first spot. At the time, we had both worked for a franchise doing this for about 3 years, so we went in with a ton of service experience, but we lacked business experience. We were open for about a year before we kind of realized that we were essentially breaking even. We were both working two other jobs, and so naturally we closed our doors after a year. From that time moving on, my story is pretty cookie cutter. I realized I have two options. I can go back to working for somebody else, or I can pivot and figure out where I screwed up or what I can do better, learn business, and really make something of this because I know I have something. I was a skilled waxer, but I didn't have the business skills necessary to really be a business owner. So I went back to school for my aesthetics license because I knew that opened up more doors for me. And I just studied business whenever I had free time independently. I never went to business school. And yeah, I mean, basically from that point on, I went from small location to small location, salon suite, room rental, you name it. I've even went to the extent of working out of the living room of my apartment in the earlier stages of my career. And once I built up a loyal clientele and I realized that I was really onto something and I started figuring out the finances of business and all of the ins and outs of business, that's when I really finally took the leap and really went solo entirely on my own into a bigger space. I grew out of it pretty quickly, and then came the storefront. So a lot of just trials and tribulations, like trying to figure out like where I was happy, what was I good at, where did I excel in business, where did I lack in business, where did I need to pick up on certain skills, and really just again like as cliche as it sounds, learning from my mistakes, trying not to make the same ones over and over again. I think I really enjoyed mostly the challenge of business more than I expected to. I love service, but as I'm getting older in my career, I have been taking a step back in service, and I've been really focusing more on the business, and it's been fun.
Hmm. Very interesting. There's a
Yeah.
lot of interesting things to talk about there.
Yeah.
One of the things I want to focus on is the fact that you closed your doors after a year with the first business.
Mm,
I don't know. I just think that that is a really interesting caveat in the story, just because I think that that really defines a person. What you do after that defines a person. And I think the true entrepreneurial spirit came out because you had the choice of either like playing it safe and like, okay, this didn't work. I'm just gonna go get another job,
mhm.
or like, all right, I'm gonna figure this out. And I think that that's really what differentiates an entrepreneur versus the typical employee worker, which is nothing wrong with. It's just I think we just think differently.
We do.
Um, I have a funny story kind of related to that when things shifted with me doing YouTube full time and I had to pivot from the music career as a full time job to the video work as a full time job. Things were pretty slow, and I was like, and I have a family and kids and stuff, and I was like, okay, I always promised that I would provide. So
Right.
what am I going to do here? I went on Indeed and started looking at potential jobs, and I realized I am so wildly underqualified as a college dropout that ran my own business for 10 years. I'm
Yeah.
like, my best job I could get is $20 an hour, and like that's not going to pay the bills for us.
Been
Um,
there.
so
Yeah.
it was a sobering realization, but also an encouraging realization that like
Sure.
entrepreneurship is my only option.
That's right.
For me, because I just was underqualified for everything else. So
Hmm.
I'm qualified as an entrepreneur because I built a business and I continue to, shift and build another.
Right.
But it was a really interesting, like, okay, this is the life I've chosen. This is
Yeah.
what I'm
It's
going to
funny
be.
that you say that because, just to piggyback off of the Indeed thing, I think it's safe to say that all startup business owners at some point fall into this position of, oh shit, I need more money. And let's be honest, as a new business owner, getting like a bank loan for a business in the early stages is very hard. Getting approved for business credit lines are very hard. So I think a lot of small business owners in the early stages tend to work several jobs, some of which they accept lower wages than what they're used to, especially as an entrepreneur, or even positions that maybe aren't so out in left field because they just need that extra, the old saying, you need money to make money, right? So I remember up until very recent, I have two children myself, trying to figure out how I can supplement my business income during the slow seasons
Mm,
and going on Indeed and looking up positions in my industry and realizing just how underpaid my industry is. And it did two things for me. One of the things that I noticed when I was doing that was my staff is really generously paid. And the second thing that I noticed was that I was going to have to be an entrepreneur for the rest of my life if I wanted to make the type of money that I wanted to be making by the hour. Because time is money and life is precious. And so, what I started to realize that was in order to make what I currently make by the hour anywhere else, I'd be looking at another 40-hour week on top of my already busy week with children, a home, and a business.
mm,
And it just was not an option because I like to be a present parent. So what did I do? I pivoted in my business and I said to myself, there are additional ways to generate income from this if you really think outside the box. And I told you I host now the Glow Local podcast. The entire preface of that was to essentially bring light to the local small business owners in the area while also organically marketing Long Island Aesthetics as the host. I'm very transparent with people about that. Even my guests know that, hey, Long Island Aesthetics is going to be a collaborator on every post. We are going to be sitting in front of a Long Island Aesthetics
Mhm.
sign. And although Long Island Aesthetics doesn't have a whole lot to do with the Glow Local podcast and what we're talking about, just having my brand in front of the camera as a collaborator on all of the short forms, it will bring attention to my company and hopefully generate maybe some new clients. And then down the line, if the podcast really does what I intend for it to do, I'd love to monetize the podcast, similar to what you're doing now. And so this all came as a means of trying to figure out how to generate the additional income that I needed to generate with the rise in overhead costs and everything else that comes with being a business owner. And let's be honest, I mean, I am a mom of two children. My husband works full time. I have to be home a lot. So I'm servicing about 7 hours a week these days and I used to be the sole provider over there. So if I'm only in the building servicing for 7 hours, what am I doing with the rest of my time when I'm home with my kids other than taking care of the kids in the house? I'm working from my computer and I'm working from home because I'm not going to take on a remote job making $12 an hour for somebody else when I can be working on my company. So I think we all go through these phases of like, what else is there? Am I on the right track? Can I be making more doing something else? You're constantly being pulled in several directions because there really is no right answer. But what I do know is that if entrepreneurship is in your blood, you are going to figure out how to make it work in some way, shape, or form, even if you fall on your ass a few times, which is what happened to me with the first
Yeah,
company.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm curious, talking about the slow seasons and talking about like growing a business and stuff.
Mhm.
What are some of the things you've taken out of that in the sense that practically, what like how are you supplementing income in your business? What did you end up adding or adjusting?
That's a good question. So we've done a lot. One of the things, so just to relevant information, I built my business during COVID. My son was 3 months old when COVID started. I was a brand new mom. I was postpartum. I was suffering from a lot of anxiety and panic attacks at the time. So I was advised to keep my brain busy.
Mm,
And what was I supposed to do to keep my brain busy when I was home with a newborn? Well, when he slept, I worked. So I grabbed my laptop, I'd take my laptop out, and I'd start exploring different ways to build a business. I literally created my business plan during a disaster. From that point on, I realized something that was really vital to the success of any business, and it was to always take advantage of slow times and always take advantage of the times where you're not making the cash flow that you need to be making to be successful. What does taking advantage of those times look like for people? Well, for everybody, it's different. But in my industry, it's getting on the camera and marketing and creating content because we live in a day and age where if you're not making content on a regular basis and you're not putting it out on a regular basis, you will fall behind. My famous line with everybody in terms of marketing in today's world is get with it or get lost because you will. You'll get lost. You can be working across the street from another company that does exactly what you do, and you can have 10, 20 years experience over them doing an even better job with even better prices. But if you're not present on social media, the business is going to them, right? So at the end of the day, there's that often used term of oversaturation in the industry, right? Is the industry too saturated? Well, sure, of course it is. I mean, we're in the beauty industry. The beauty industry has blown up the past 10 years since I've gotten into it. So what can we do to stand out? Well, during my downtime, we do a lot of marketing. We do a lot of content and we really start pushing, we do product retail heavy. So we talk to we really emphasize talking to our clients about product usage. But what I do is I go on Facebook groups, moms groups, such like that. And I look for women that are looking for skincare advice and I offer free virtual consultations. And what I do is I actually bring these women on to a virtual consultation out of the comfort of their own home. And I just sit there with them for 30 minutes on FaceTime and talk about their skincare goals. If I feel like it's something out of my reach or something I can't help them with right in that moment where I need to refer them out, I'll do that. But 9 times out of 10, I can refer even two, three, or four products that are coming from my online shop. And I send them a link, they click it, they purchase the products, and I get a direct deposit into my bank account. So at the end of the day, these are little things that I've had to do to help supplement the income in my company during slow times because during busy season, I don't really have time to do virtual consults. But during slow season, I mean, everyone has cabin fever. They're pretty much in the house, doing whatever. So people just for the sake of socialization, love getting onto a free virtual consult. There's no strings attached. I mean, you can sit there with me for 30 minutes and I can tell you everything I know, and you don't need to buy a single thing. But because people know who I am and they know what kind of person I am, because my reviews speak volumes about my integrity, they most of the time take my advice and buy the products. And at the end of the day, that's my job and I'm providing a service. And that's how I make extra money. So that's some of the ways that we use up like our downtime, virtual consults, selling retail products, tons of marketing, getting in front of the camera, creating content, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's mundane, and even when it's really cringy. But we are able to generate income in different ways when you really, I mean, there's other ways, but those are the two things that we really do during like our slower season.
I like the Facebook Moms group
Yeah.
idea. I think that's really interesting. I think that a lot of businesses utilize the groups, but like
Hmm.
offering the service and then potentially like upselling through the service, the free service is a really interesting way to get people in the door.
Yeah.
I also really like what you said about businesses utilizing the slow seasons and the whether it be monetarily or like actual like foot traffic slow.
Hmm.
To some degree, I find that they're a blessing in disguise if utilized properly.
That's right.
And I don't want to sound like one of those like business gurus, like use these like, but like it's true. Like
Hmm.
for me, historically, November through January is very slow.
Us too.
Just because I think people are busy and people don't want to spend money, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But utilizing those to whether to find new avenues, like you just said, what like be like, okay, where am I not? Where am I dropping the ball? What could I
Right.
be doing differently?
Hmm.
What could I add to the business?
Right.
Or doing the things that you've been wanting to do for a long time that you just kept kicking the can down the road because either you didn't want to do it, know how to do it, or have the time to do it.
Totally.
Um, and I did that the past couple months, and it was really interesting just to see doors open up. And I was like, oh wow, like
Yeah.
I'm actually grateful that January was slow because I've been wanting to do this one thing
Right.
for so long, and I finally pulled the trigger on it, and now it's working out.
I love
It's
that. If
it's
you're anything like me, you have a to-do list with items on it that have been sitting there for weeks and months, even at times. And those are the times where you start checking those
yeah.
boxes off.
To some degree, I think that I don't know. I don't like letting things sit on the to do list. I'm more of a
You're proactive.
which can be a problem on the other side though, is that I'm
Yeah.
doing too many things. That's
Right.
my problem. It's more of like I like to start things and then not that I don't finish them, but now I'm juggling 15 different things. And I'm like, I probably could have waited to start a couple of these.
Listen, everybody has a method that works for them. And based on my current lifestyle, again, I know I always talk about this, but it's the biggest part of my life. I'm a mom. And so I may have a plan. And, the old saying, you make a plan, God laughs. Like when you're a mother, forget about it. I mean, it's like one day I have a whole plan to do X, Y, and Z, and then my son's school calls because he needs to be picked up. I mean, granted, that doesn't happen often, or, but my mother will call me, oh, she was going to pick up my other one from daycare. I can't pick him up today. Yeah, all sorts of little things, just these like monkey wrenches that get thrown at you. And so I've had to learn how to prioritize my to do list because
Mm,
I have severe ADHD. I'm very much unmedicated. I've learned how to manage it as I've gotten older. And one of the things that happens to me because of that is I often get very overwhelmed and distracted, and my wheels don't ever stop spinning. And what happens is I am one of those clinical ADHD girls where it's like I start this, don't finish it, start that, don't finish it. And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize that that's more damaging than anything else. And so I've had to discipline myself and basically say, okay, it's okay. This can wait, this can't. Let's do this start to finish and complete it. And then I literally have on my phone in a notes, I have a to-do list. And it's like, what needs to be done? Okay, we do that. We're gonna do that and we're gonna do it until it's done and we're gonna be done. Then we're gonna move on to the next thing when we have time. But yeah, I mean, I often start things and then I'll get that call that I gotta leave early to pick up the kids or whatever. And then, it's all right, when am I gonna get that next open free hour? It's crazy at this phase of my career, when I see a gap in my schedule with clients, I'm like, yes. I used to cry, like, I don't want gaps in the schedule, I want full books, but I love a gap in the schedule. Gives me just a little bit of extra time to catch up on administrative work.
yeah, and don't get me wrong, I have a to do list. Like I'm not saying I went, I wasn't blowing smoke on myself before. I'm just saying like the concept, but I very much agree tremendously. I have two very young kids as well,
Yeah.
and our lives are not our own
No.
anymore. And let me take that back. I think that you have a choice. I think that either you devote yourself to them, obviously everything, both in balance, but or you choose not to and you devote yourself to work. But then I think you'll reap the benefits of both of those in the end. Whether
Yeah,
everything has sacrifices. I think
sure. It's
so.
a season.
Well, I'm just saying, if you decide to devote your time now to your kids, you're sacrificing the potential growth in business,
Right.
but reaping the rewards of what that will look like down the line. Or on the flip side, if you sacrifice time with your kids now to grow your business will grow, but the
Right.
relationships might not. And
Yeah.
I think that everybody wants the best of both worlds, and I don't think it's really possible. I think that there's a season for each, and that
Hmm.
season could be a day long. I'm saying like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't do whatever. I have to go do this in each direction, actually.
Yeah, sure. You're
And
right.
trying to have grace for that. But I'm learning every day. I pray almost every day, help me be a little bit more selfless because and put
Hmm.
my family first. Because it's very easy, even though it's the right thing to do, and like depending on what you decide to do, and but like I still have my own desires of what I want to do,
Yeah, yeah,
and
right.
like and even though I'm going to put my family first, sometimes I get frustrated about that, and I'm
Hmm.
learning to just the prayer is that I don't be frustrated, that I just enjoy the fact of actually doing it rather than being like, but yeah, but I wanted to be doing this. And it's like, yeah, but it's not about me. Stop making it about me.
Well, listen, at the end of the day, I believe that working hard in your business takes care of your family, right?
Mm,
And they rely on, I'm assuming, your income to some extent, if not entirely. And my theory is that, if I'm putting 100 into my business whenever possible, I'm benefiting my family as well
of
because
course.
I don't spend my money on myself. I don't. Rarely, at least I should say. I spend my money on my children, my home, my groceries, my bills, the things that my car, the means that the way, the thing that I use to get my children to school and to sports. And, listen, we're business owners. And when you work for a company, you're held accountable daily by the person that you're employed by. And that's kind of a blessing because it takes off that, I don't know if it's a burden necessarily, but the pressure, because that, you can't just not show up to work and not get your job done and then still expect a paycheck every week because let's be honest, enough of that and you're just going to get let go and now you don't have a job and you don't have a paycheck. Where with us, we have to hold ourselves accountable, which is so hard to do because as human beings, we have that area in our brain that seeks pleasure. And oftentimes that doesn't necessarily come from succeeding in business. That comes from, I'm just going to take the day off, cancel all my clients, and go to the beach. You and I were talking before. I have my hobbies outside of, my job. I ride motorcycles, and it's therapeutic for me. It's one of my favorite things to do outside of work and when I have free time from my kids during the warmer seasons. And how many times I've had a friend contact me, let's take a beach ride. It's beautiful today. And I've got a book full of clients. I'm not getting paid if I don't go in today. Like I can cancel all 10 of those clients and sure, I could probably reschedule them and they'll probably come in eventually and I'll probably make that money, but I hold myself to a standard of accountability that I think is imperative to the success of my company. I don't just take off because I want to go for a beach ride. I take off because my kids are sick. I have to hold those dates because let's say you're my client and I'm constantly canceling on you. You're gonna go somewhere else eventually. No one wants to go to a business that's literally canceling every appointment that they make because everyone else has a life too. And so, I think that just circling back to the idea of, balancing family and business, my business is only as successful as the time and accountability that, I put into it. And my family relies on the success of the company at this point, because it's what feeds them, it's
Mm,
what pays the bills.
sure.
Sure, my husband, without him, we'd be screwed too.
What does he do?
Um, my husband, so he's changed careers recently, actually, which is really cool. For 12 years, he's by trade a mechanical engineer, and so for 12 years he worked in the city as a project manager. And then about a year ago, he was just so burnt out from years of traveling in another city, and that life is wild. So he, for hobby, his whole life has rebuilt and restored cars, and he somehow, some way, just happened to fall into this position. He found this job restoring luxury vehicles
Wow.
for mostly really, let's just say, bougie clients. He has some really incredible projects that he's been working on, but the one that he's been working on recently is he's been restoring and rebuilding a car for a very, very, very famous person. So it's been a really cool project, but he's been like, all in on this project, trying to get it done. And
So he's like an employee at this company that works
yeah,
on cars.
yeah, he works for a company restoring luxury vehicles.
Very interesting.
But it's new. It's only about a year now that he's been doing this, and he's kind of like at the bottom of the totem pole again, And so he's been like really balls to the wall, like gets up and leaves the house before anybody else does, is home when we're ready for bath and bed.
Hmm.
And that's Monday through Thursday. So I'm like a single mom from like 3 o'clock to 7 o'clock, Monday through Thursday, which is fine. But yeah, work stops at 3 o'clock most days. I don't work nights anymore. I barely work weekends. I know that eventually I'll get that time back in the company, but for
Hmm.
now I outsourced it to my staff to do nights and weekends. And I just get my work done during the week. But I built this life, and so I can actually sit back and say that prior to this happening, prior to me taking weekends and nights off, I was working weekends and nights
Hmm.
all the time,
Sure.
so I put my time in, which is cool. And sometimes I get like imposter syndrome where I'm like, who are you to say that you can't work nights and weekends? Like, it's the beauty industry. That's when people need you. And it's because I built something that I can do that with. And I'm proud of that,
Hmm.
but it wasn't easy.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. Like I don't know if I would call it imposter syndrome in my case, but or not. But I still don't totally understand that phrase, to be honest with you. But I just feel like, not, I'm not saying you. I just feel
Yeah.
like it's used on the internet all the time, and I don't know if people really even know what it means.
Yeah.
I'm sure you do. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But I kind of again question like, oh, should I be working hard, or could I mean,
Yeah.
I know I could be,
Yeah.
but at the same rate of like, to what end? Like,
Right.
for what?
Mhm.
And if I do, I'm not saying, and it's not even from like a obviously lazy perspective. It's like, okay, yeah, so I make a couple extra bucks, but then I have to be home at 7 o'clock every night, and
Yeah.
miss, or sorry, I can't play with you right now. Daddy has to go downstairs, and it's like,
Mhm.
what am I sacrificing? To me, it's really just not worth it.
Well, listen, my son is in first grade, and he just started wrestling, and he had his first wrestling tournament on one of the only weekends of the month that I worked. And it was rescheduled because of the blizzard. Go figure. It wasn't on the day that I worked, and then it was rescheduled to the day that I worked. And so I decided to cancel all of those reschedule all of those clients for that Saturday and go watch my son wrestle. And I didn't have to go watch him wrestle, but I chose that because that's what's more important to me at this stage of my life. I built the business before my kids were born. I've built it to what it is since they've been around. They've been my biggest driving, motivating factor, as cliche as that sounds, because again, failure is just not an option anymore. I've got children that
Yeah, that's
rely on
fair.
me. Back then, if I failed, what did I have to lose?
That's fair.
I can go get a job and I could start over, but can't do that
Can't
anymore.
do that anymore.
Not at this
Yeah,
point.
that's fair. That's
So,
funny. I
yeah.
never really thought about it that way, but you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's just interesting. You've been doing this for 12 years, you said?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just interesting how at this point, it's not like we've been doing it for a year or two.
Mhm.
So a lot has changed.
Yeah.
And kind of very similarly, the way we treat work, the way we think about work is very different than the way we first started. And I think just seasons change, and it's just interesting that we can actually be like, oh, back in my day when I first
Yeah.
started.
I know. That's where the imposter syndrome comes from. So you were like, I perceive imposter syndrome as this idea that who am I? Like who am I? Right? And that's what imposter syndrome is when sometimes you have to like wake yourself up and be like, no, I'm the fucking boss. Right? Like I am. I'm the boss now. I wasn't the boss. I wasn't always the boss, but now I am. And I have the ability to say, I'm not working today. And who's going to tell me otherwise? I'm going to my son's wrestling tournament because that's where I want to go. I want to cancel the week of clients to go to the Caribbean, then that's what I'm going to do. And I forever and ever and ever I worked for people who told me when I could take off, what my time was worth, what I was going to get paid by the hour, how much sick time I'd get, how much vacation time that I would get. No, you can't take off on a holiday. It's the busiest day of the year. 4th of July in my world, forget about it. I walked out of my corporate job 7 months pregnant with my son because I went back temporarily when I went back for my aesthetics license just to make some money. I, at that point, had already had my first salon suite, the one that I closed after a year. After I closed that salon suite for a year, I said, I got to go get my aesthetics license. 1 week into the program, I found out I was pregnant. So, what did I do? I said, okay, while I'm in this program, I'm going to go back to that corporate shithole because I hated it there. They treated everybody like garbage. I went back to that.
In the aesthetics industry, or
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And I went back to that corporate job in the aesthetics world. And within a couple of months of being there, I was instantly reminded why I wanted to be solo. I stuck it out as long as I could until 4th of July rolled around the week of, which was literally is one of the busiest weeks in my industry.
Why is that the case?
The place that I was
That
working at was
surprises
a
me.
waxing place. So
Oh,
girls are getting
yeah,
waxed to go on vacation.
yeah.
Boys too. So long story short, for about a week or two at the place I was working at, the air condition was broken. And if you know anything about the waxing world, you cannot wax in high heat. The room has to be like 68 degrees, like max, really, for the wax not to get sticky and in order for it to successfully come off the skin. I was waxing in above that, like 85-degree rooms, no ventilation, no windows, pregnant for like a few weeks before finally I literally said to the owner, I said, I can't work like this when I'm not pregnant, but I cannot work like this while I am pregnant. And the response that I got was disgusting. It was, if you can't handle the job, then why do you work here? And you know what I said? Good luck getting through the 4th of July weekend with one less waxer. And I walked out and I never looked back because I realized that day that my time, my health, my unborn child's health, and my money and everything else could be in my control the day that I say, fuck these people. It wasn't that I was angry at the company I worked for or the owners of the company. It was just an awakening moment for me as an entrepreneur to say, first of all, I'm making $12 an hour, and what the hell is that? And then on top of it, I'm working in these hot conditions because no one can figure out how to get the air condition repaired. We're talking about a business that relies on it. I mean, all of these things started to just wake me up and made me realize that I didn't want to do it anymore, not for someone else. I mean, shit, if shit's going to hit the fan, I want to be the only person to blame. And frankly, it has happened. My place has flooded several times. We flooded like 3, 4 times already. South Shore, Massapequa. The sewage in my building isn't, not the sewers, the piping in my building isn't the best. We've been in some really shitty situations, for lack of better words. Literally, the toilet bowl was overflowing recently. The whole entire hallway was flooded with toilet bowl water. Um, and we were back up and running within an hour of the overflow. If this happened at my last job, forget about it. I mean, I don't even want to know how they would have handled it. The whole point is that I am a control freak. I'm not going to lie. But the day that you capitalize on your own flaws are the days that you find success in business. If I can control anything, it's at least in a way that I see fit. And hey, if it fails, I have nobody else to blame for me. I mean, for that, other than me, right? And so, yeah, I can be a bit of a control freak and a bit of a micromanager, but to a healthy extent. And hey, my staff has been with me, both of them, for years. We don't have a crazy turnover. People are happy where they work, and the clients are. We have over 2,000 five-star reviews.
Oh,
So, again, forget about, what my time is worth and, my value. I created a place, a workplace that people enjoy working at, and I've created a business that the consumer enjoys, patronaging. So, it's very, it's again, it's one of those things where it's very satisfying.
yeah. What kind of services do you provide?
So I particularly specialize in hair removal services. So I do mostly waxing and laser hair removal. My team does those services as well, with the addition of facials and makeup services and stuff like that.
I want to talk branding
Yeah.
briefly. I really like the name Long Island Aesthetics. I think that was very similar to my goal with the New York Business Podcast. I just feel like the name holds weight, and
Hmm.
I could have called it anything else, but I
That's
just
right.
feel like when it shows up in a DM or something like that, it has a bit more weight than
It does.
I don't know. Even I thought considered rebranding because I could see this becoming something larger, and I was like, will it hinder the fact that it's New York in the title as opposed to
Mm,
like for example, the example somebody else gave me was like, yeah, if you see like the San Francisco Business Podcast come in your feed, are you gonna really care? Because San Francisco was like, not really, or
touche.
like Tampa Bay, I'm like, not really. My argument is like, this is New York, one of the capitals of the world. Like, granted, like, would I be interested if maybe the London Business Podcast came up? Perhaps, like, it's a bit more of a named holder,
Sure.
but I don't know. But then I was like, what am I gonna recall? Like, behind the business, like, it just doesn't have the same punch,
Yeah.
But kind of very similar, like Long Island Aesthetics is like that has some serious punch to it.
The name is what it is.
Yeah.
That's what I think, and Long Island Aesthetics came from a place of a business mindset versus a aesthetic mindset. My theory with Long Island Aesthetics was two things. We're going to create an acronym that people will never forget, LIE.
Ah, I
We
love
live on
that.
Long Island.
Yeah.
And in
More
addition
like the
to
Long Island Expressway. Yeah.
exactly, that's where it came from. I said, one of my clients said it the best. She said, Your LIE is the only LIE I look forward to going to.
Yeah.
And I was like, That's awesome. Where did it come from? It came from a place of SEO. Okay. I mean, I'm sure that's exactly where yours came from, right? I mean, you wake up one day and you're like, well, I have to rebrand because I'm no longer waxed by Andrea. I am a brick and mortar salon that offers services aside from waxing now with a team behind me. So, what can I do to encompass who we are and to also make sure that we are like the first place that pops up when people look up aesthetic services on Long Island? Long Island Aesthetics. So it came from a place mostly of SEO where I said to myself, when people are searching for us, how, can we be the first to pop up? And then I just loved the acronym LIE, and we use it. We use it all the time. We reference the company as LIE. Both our group chat is LIE, and we are LIE, the good
That's
one.
cool. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
What would you say the goal is for the business in the next coming years?
That's a good question. So I'm a very day by day kind of girl.
Mm.
Mostly because I really believe that when you make a plan, God laughs. Why? Well, because every time I have made a plan, when it comes down to actually executing it, I always end up making changes
Yeah,
anyway.
sure.
So, what is my plan? Right now, our goal is to fill our books to the point where we are just pumping clients out, 7 days a week, morning to night, providing good services, making sure that the clients love us, and make sure that we iron out any potential problems that are occurring in the business. That way, when we do decide to expand, we know exactly what we're doing. I intend to expand at some point. I don't have a timeline on it because I hate pressure. I am not in a rush to expand, but I know that I'll know it's time when the time comes.
As a franchise or as a second location?
Just a second location. My goal, if let's just say in a perfect world, everything, the stars aligned, my goal would be to have probably either one or two more locations on Long Island.
Where would you think you would go?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I don't know if I would go too far from Massapequa because I like the convenience of being close. But I also don't want to be, I don't want to be too far either. So I, I say that, and all in the same breath, I'm going to say this. I hope to look back at this one day and be like, "Holy shit, I did it." My family, my sister moved down to South Carolina 2 years ago, and my mom and dad just sold their house, and they're moving down to South Carolina in a week. I am the last one standing in New York, from my side of my family, and I do want to at some point open a location in South Carolina. But I haven't put it out into the universe yet because I'm not ready for it. And it's funny because my father actually just said to me the other day, he's like, "Oh, there's a couple of new storefronts available up the block from our development." And I'm like, "Don't send me the link." Because I'm a little impulsive
Mm,
and I don't want to buy anything or, sign any agreements until I'm 100% ready.
sure.
Listen, it, the way I even ended up in my storefront now is an interesting story in and of itself. I was in, I wasn't looking for a storefront. I was happy in my little salon suite. But something happened at the salon suite. I felt limited. I wanted to bring on another service. And I was told that the girl down the hall was bringing in that service and that he gave her a, what is it, a non compete, whatever they call it. Basically, he had told her he would allow her to be the only one in the building to offer that service. And I'm like, wait a minute. We are all privately owned businesses. There's like 4 hair salons in here. What makes this any different? And I don't know what the agreement was. I don't even know why an agreement was made. But what I do know is that God knew that I didn't belong there.
Mm.
And that service that I was told I couldn't bring in is my number one money making service at my brick and mortar now.
Things work out in interesting ways.
I had no plan on
Yeah.
leaving. I had no plan on expanding. But when I was told, and again, remember I told you I'm a bit of a control freak. When I was told that I could not run my business the way that I saw
Sure.
fit,
Yeah.
I broke my lease a year early, paid all the fees. I didn't give a shit.
Well,
Called my lawyer. I'm like, what the fuck? And she goes, by the time you're done doing anything, you're going to be out much more than whatever that fee is. Pay it and move on. Take it as a blessing. Take it as a lesson.
mm.
And let's just say that when I signed the lease at the brick and mortar, I had my lawyer review it really thoroughly, which I didn't have her do with the first
Sure.
salon.
Sure.
So, listen, there's always going to be fine print,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't read the fine print in my salon suite. And there was, to my memory, nothing in there that stated that I could be restricted to the services I wanted to offer. But it wasn't worth an argument.
Yeah, it's interesting with business sometimes. Just there's a phrase from a TV show that I watch that they use a lot in the show, and I'm kind of starting to adapt it into my own life.
Hmm.
And it's ignore and override. It's a whole military show, so it's what they say to each other because they just need to move on from things.
Okay.
But it's like, how important is it? I just need to ignore it and override and move on. Of course, they they use it in the capacity that's probably a little unhealthy, but uh, I could probably use it and benefit from it in a healthy way in my life.
Sure.
Just okay, it is what it is. I just need to
It is
ignore it
what
and
it
move
is.
ignore it and override.
Yeah.
You know, the last question I want to ask, and the last question I ask every guest to wrap up is, what is something you know now in your career that you wish you knew when you first started out?
Ooh, that's a tough one. What is something I know now that I wish I knew then? um, don't put all of your eggs in one basket.
In what sense?
I had a very unexpected 2025 medically. I ended up having surgery. I had a lot of complications. Post-operatively, when I was in PACU from surgery, I almost died. I had a really, really, really bad delayed hemorrhage, and I was rushed back into the OR for basically a resuscitating blood transfusion. I was statting out. My doctor told me had I left the hospital, I was discharged, by the way. I just went to pee before I got in the car to leave, and that's when I began to hemorrhage. And so my doctor told me had I gotten in the car, the likelihood of them being able to save me would have been slim because of how bad the bleeding was internally. Um, the relevance to that is that I obviously had to take a little extra time off from work than I had intended. I also ended up needing another surgery to fix a lot of the problems that occurred from all those complications. And so throughout 2025, I had to take a huge step back from my business. And let's just say that if I was the sole provider, I would have been screwed. My team held it down for me hardcore. They took on all my clients and they kept that place running while I was dealing with my medical stuff. And so when I say don't put all your eggs in a basket, it means don't just rely on yourself. Outsource help,
Mm,
whether that be via staff or whatever else needs to be outsourced, marketing, media, whatever, finances. Have help. Have a strong team. Your business is only as successful as your,
yeah,
strongest team members. And so I owe a lot of my success to my staff because without them, there's a really good chance that my business would have crumbled last year because I couldn't work very much.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Very
don't put all
interesting.
your eggs in a basket.
I like that. I think that's great. I think that's a really interesting takeaway. I think that this. I think the how do I phrase this? I think the entrepreneurial spirit can very often be a "I'll do it myself" mentality,
Yeah.
and I think that that bucks up against it in a really healthy way. Because
Mhm.
like you said, if something, God forbid, something else happens or something happens, if you're betting 100% on yourself, it's a
That can
dangerous.
be
It can potentially be a dangerous game to
that can
play.
be dangerous. I
Yeah,
mean, listen, I don't ever bank on something bad happening,
sure,
but I could be in a car accident tomorrow.
sure,
And if that was to happen and I was the only service provider, where's the money
yeah,
coming in? And so I can say with confidence that if I needed to take a step back for a month because of whatever reason, that I would still I would still get my paychecks every week,
hmm, yeah,
So they may not be as much, but at least my family can at
yeah,
least, still
yeah.
see some of my income.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, it's a pleasure to hear your story. I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you.
And
This is great.
yeah, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.